We are the proud Black Buddhist World Association, and today we bring you an exciting Buddhist lecture. Now, before I get started in my Buddhist lecture, one of the things I like to make note of, that today is not only January the 1st, but today is the last day of Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa is the African American holiday that means first fruits. And I like to show you a picture of me and my wife just 7 days ago where we wished everybody a happy Kwanzaa. Last night I was watching Anderson Cooper and the guys on CNN, and one of the guys had their tuxedo on. And today, as you see, Anthony of Elmore, I have my kente cloth tuxedo. So instead of going out partying last night, I put my kente cloth tuxedo on so I can do a Buddhist lecture that's inclusive of African and African American culture and history, and I can also wear this to the Kwanzaa meeting today, because today is New Year's, and New Year's is the last day of Kwanzaa. Now, the last day of Kwanzaa is the word, that's a Swahili word called Imani. Imani means faith. So, you can practice your Buddhist teachings because it talks about faith. Faith in yourself, faith in the community. So, Kwanzaa and Buddhism, everything is all interconnected and interrelated. So again, Happy New Year and Happy Kwanzaa. Now, I'm Anthony F. Elmore. For those who don't know me, my name is Anthony F. Elmore. I am President and Founder of the proud Black Buddhist World Association. Now, what's exciting about me being President of the proud Black Buddhist World Association is that we really, at this particular time, are the only Buddhists in the world who can bring you an African or a Black perspective of Nichiren, of not only Nichiren Buddhism, but perhaps Buddhism period, because there are no African Americans or people of African descent that's actually giving Buddhist lectures inclusive of African and African American culture and history. So this Buddhist lecture is very, very important. Now, let's get into my lecture today. My lecture today is the New Year's Gosho. Now, for those of you who are just getting into Buddhism, you don't know anything about Buddhism. Well, first of all, we practice Nichiren Buddhism. Now, there are thousands, I guess perhaps, sets of Buddhism. We practice Nichiren Buddhism because we follow the teachings and the tenet of the messenger of the Buddha. The messenger of the Buddha, his name was Nichiren, and we called him Nichiren Shonin. Shonin means priest in Japanese, so he's Nichiren Shonin. Some people refer to him as Nichiren Dai. Dai means great in Japanese, and Shonin means priest. So Nichiren, the great priest. Now, Nichiren Shonin, to some, in Japan, they call him the true Buddha. Well, we at the proud Black Buddhist World Association do not relate to Nichiren Shonin as the true Buddha, but because Nichiren never said in any of his writings that he was the true Buddha, but he did refer to himself as Bodhisattva Jogyo, or Bodhisattva Superior Practices, which all of his life indicate. So we who are with the proud Black Buddhist World Association, we relate to Nichiren as Bodhisattva Superior Practices that's explained in the Lotus Sutra. Nichiren was a proponent of the Lotus Sutra, and he explains Buddhism, or he explains the teachings of Shakyamuni based up on the Lotus Sutra. So we at the Proud Black Buddhist World Association, our teacher is the Lotus Sutra. We follow the Lotus Sutra because the Lotus Sutra are the words in the spirit of the Buddha, of the true Buddha, Shakyamuni. Now, this Gosho that we're going to lecture on today, it's called, most folks refer to it as the New Year's Gosho. Now, to some in Japan, it's called the Mishimoshu Gosho, or the Rice Cakes Gosho. We're not going to get off into the details of it, although it was written by a family or a woman who had sent offerings to Nichiren Shonin the first of the year. And what Nichiren did, or what Nichiren Shonin, the Buddha, not the Buddha, but the messenger of the Buddha did, because they made offerings to him, these mishimushi cakes, these rice cakes and the other things, he acknowledged it, but he also took the time to explain Buddhism. Now, the New Year's Gosho is an excellent Gosho to explain the teachings of Nichiren Buddhism, because Nichiren Shonin gets off into his dynamic teachings of the Buddha Shakyamuni, but he explains it in a very poetic way, and he gives illustrations to teach us. And what this does, or what this particular Gosho does, those of you who are just getting off into Buddhism, you can use this actually as an introduction to Buddhism. Now, the Gosho again is called the New Year's Gosho. Those of you who don't have a Gosho, you can go on the SGI's website and you can Google it and you can find the New Year's Gosho. To those who may not know it in another name, it's called the Mushimosho Gosho. And I'm very familiar with this Gosho because I read and studied this Gosho many years ago. But let me get into the Mushimosho Gosho, or the New Year's Gosho, and give you an understanding of Nichiren's Buddhism. Now, the most exciting part about this is that we present an African, or an African American, or a black perspective of Buddhism, and you can compare our New Year's lecture and compare it to some of the ones the Japanese and the other Buddhist sects. You will find that we bring a different and exciting diversity and a perspective, because we teach Buddhism in a language that those who may not really understand Buddhism, we talk in black dialect. We talk about it in a language that's inclusive of African and African American people. Also, those of you who are with some of the other Nichiren sects like SGI or Nichiren Shoshu or Nichiren Shu, there's one thing I want to bring up. Now, there's a Gosho that I want you to refer to. The Gosho is called the true aspect of all phenomena. Now, the reason that I bring up the true aspect of all phenomena is because we have people that's in Buddhism, that study Nichiren Buddhism, who do not study. In the Gosho, the true aspect of all phenomena, Nichiren Shonin writes, I have written my most important teachings, grasp their meaning firmly, and make them a part of your life. Believe in the Gohanzan. Now, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who are new to Buddhism, this is the Gohanzan. The Gohanzan is the scroll. So you can use this as an introduction to Buddhism, but the Gohanzan is the scroll. So he said, believe in the Gohanzan, the supreme object of devotion, and all of Jamba Viva. Be sure to strengthen your faith and receive the protection of Shakyamuni, many treasures, and the Buddhas of the 10 directions. Now, this is the important part. He says, exert yourself in the two ways of practice and study. Without practice and study, there can be no Buddhism. He says, you must not only persevere yourself, you must also teach others. Both practice and study arise from faith. Teach others to the best of your ability, even if it is only a single sentence or phrase. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the reason that I wrote that is because we have a culture in America, like in Nichiren Shoshu and some of these organizations, we only have people from Japan, or we only have limited people teaching Buddhism. Clearly, Nichiren Shonin says, and he says, teach others to the best of your ability. He didn't say a priest must do it. He didn't say we have to have a leader from Japan. But he said, you must not only persevere, you must teach others to the best of your ability. So what I am doing today, ladies and gentlemen, we are following the tenets of Nichiren Shonin by teaching others Buddhism to the best of our ability. We didn't say we're no great sage or anything like that, but what we have is the spirit to teach Buddhism. See, what Nichiren says, Nichiren writes also in this same Gosho that what is important is that he says fortune comes from one's heart and makes one worthy of respect. You see, what you do in your heart, this lecture comes from my heart. I wanted to give you a share with others an understanding of Buddhist teachings, and I do it from the standpoint of an African American because I want African Americans to be inclusive. The Buddha Shakyamuni says that he wants to make all people equal to him. And if we don't have diversity in our teachings, then we're not going to be equal. We don't have to just wait on a Japanese to teach us or some great leader to teach us. We can come from our heart and soul and teach Buddhism like I'm doing today. So let me get off into this lecture. Now, what the Daishonin says, he says, quote, I have received 100 slabs of steamed rice cake, a basket of fruit. He says, New Year's Day marks the first day, the first month, the beginning of the year, and the start of spring. Now, let's stop for a minute. What they used in Japan was they used the Chinese calendar. So when the Daishonin says it's the start of spring, there's two meanings here also. And when I read the part that Buddhism is the start of spring, is that New Year's represents the time where the earth rotates around the sun. That's a year. Now, the start of spring is a beginning. It's Hannim Yo, or means to start from now. So when you start to offer or make an offering the first of the year, this day is so important. This is what Nichiren teaches. He goes on further. He says, quote, a person who celebrates this day will accumulate virtue and be loved by all. That means when you start to celebrate New Year's Day, you become a good person because what? New Year's is a time when you says, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to be a better person. And when you start with Buddhism that says you're going to make your day starting off with the Lotus Sutra, you are accumulating virtue because you start the year off with the Gohanzan. This is how you accumulate virtue. He says, a person who celebrates his day will accumulate virtue, be loved by all, just as the moon becomes full gradually, moving from west to east, and the sun shines more brightly, traveling from east to west. So Nichiren uses examples of nature. He said, this is going to happen naturally. This is what he means. He said, just as the sun moves from east to west, it's a natural phenomenon. And when you come the first part of the year and you have an honest and sincere dedication, or you devote yourself to the Lotus Sutra at the beginning of the year, just as the sun moves naturally, you will gain benefits in a natural way. It is not something like a fire that spreads, but this is something that's natural. Let's go further in the Gosho. Now, in this Gosho, the Daishonin, Nichiren Shonin, explains the differences in Buddhism, and some of us who come from Christian backgrounds, Nichiren kind of explains it. He answers a question because the person who sent him the basket of fruit had asked him. She says, first of all, the question of where exactly hell and the Buddha exists. One sutra states that hell exists underground. Even in the Christian Bible, it says that hell exists underground. Another sutra says that the Buddha is in the West. And there were teachings that the Buddha was in the West, Now, but he goes on further. Closer examination, however, reveals that both exist in our 5-foot body. Let's stop for a minute. What Nichiren is saying, he is saying that what the Buddha and the devil or hell and heaven exists within your life. This is the tenet of Buddhism. This is the tenet of Nichiren Buddhism. This is the tenet of Shakyamuni Buddhism. And especially, this is what the Lotus Sutra teaches us, that both hell and heaven, or hell and enlightenment, both exist within our body. Now, Nichiren takes his Gosho to go give us a little bit better example. He goes on further. He says, quote, this must be true because hell is in the heart of a person who inwardly despises his father and disregards his mother. It is like the lotus seed, which contains both blossom and fruit. In the same way, the Buddha dwells in our hearts. For example, flint has the potential to produce fire, and gems have an intrinsic value. Now, let's go into this. He said, hell is in the heart of a person who inwardly despises his father. I've met a lot of women. In fact, the standard that I use for choosing a woman is I want to choose a woman who loves her father. Like in our African American community, there are many women and many people who were abandoned by their fathers. The social structure of African Americans are broken, and a lot of us don't have stable families, and the fathers were just like in the old days when they have slaves who go and make babies. We got this tradition where people will make babies and don't take care of their children. And kids grow up hating their father, or inwardly hating their father, and certain people grow up and they disrespect their mother. Well, the hell is in the heart of those kind of people. Women who don't respect their fathers, it's going to be really difficult that they're not going to respect you. This is one of the things I've learned from my Buddhist practice. And men who don't respect their fathers, they are not the kind of people who will respect you because they have not been trained in the practice of being the best humans. So hell exists within our body. He goes on further. Now, he gives an example. When you look at flint, flint is a rock. It really has no relationship to fire, but when you strike two flint together, a spark will come. See, so Nichiren Shonin gives you this example by saying, what? The Buddha exists. He says what? Flint has the potential to produce fire. And gems have intrinsic value. In other words, the Buddha nature intrinsically or inherently exists within you. And he gives this example of a flint and a fire. Let's go on further. And he breaks it down. He says, we ordinary people can neither see our own eyelashes, which are so close, nor the heavens in the distance. Likewise, we do not see the Buddha exist in our hearts. You may question, how is it that the Buddha can reside within us when our bodies originating from our parents' sperm and blood are the source of the three poisons and the seed of cardinal desires? But repeated consideration assures us in this matter. See, we who are regular people, we cannot see that we got a Buddha nature. We don't know we got a Buddha nature. We can't even see our eyelashes. So how can we see that that's a Buddha? Now, one of the things that happen in Nichiren Buddhism, that when you chant Nam Myoho or Namu Myoho Renge Kyo to the Gohanzan, you can actually see the Buddha nature and you can see the hell. That's why we have a Gohanzan. Let's go further. He goes on further and says, the pure lotus flower blooms out of the muddy pond. The fragrant sandalwood grows from the soil. The graceful cherry blossoms comes forth from trees. The beautiful Yang Kai Fi was born of a woman of low station, and the moon rises from behind the mountains to shed light on them. Misfortune comes from one mouth and ruins one, but fortune comes from one's heart and makes one worthy of respect. Now let's go into this, ladies and gentlemen. What Nichiren Shonin teaches us is that through our problems, you may look at yourself today. You says, man, the bills are behind. I'm having problems with my marriage. I'm having this problem and that problem and this problem and that problem. But what Nichiren Shonin is teaching us, or what Buddhism teaches us, is that what? The pure lotus flower blooms out of a muddy pond. With all of your problems and with all of your challenges, ladies and gentlemen, those problems and those challenges are the source. Through chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo or Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, practicing to the Lotus Sutra, those are the things that you use to bring out your Buddha nature. That's a word of Bono Sukhavadaya, or your earthly desires equal enlightenment. Through chanting and through practicing the Buddhist faith, you can come out like a lotus flower. It doesn't look like it's there, but it's there. The lotus flower blooms in the swamp, and with your problems, you can bloom. Because out of ordinary things, you may look at yourself and feel down on yourself, but you as an ordinary person can lift yourself up to become a Buddha, because the Buddha nature is inside of you. Now, he goes on further and says, misfortune comes from one's mouth and ruins one. What that means, ladies and gentlemen, is that the mouth is sometimes the mind. That when you do not have the proper mind or the proper thinking, you become ruined. But if you really want to become a person who is not ruined, he said fortune comes from the heart and makes one worthy of respect. That if you become a person with a good heart, not the mind but the heart, if your heart is right, then you are going to achieve. You are going to do good, because good fortune comes from the heart, ladies and gentlemen. That is what Nichiren teaches us. And let's go to the last paragraph. He says, the sincerity of making offerings to the Lotus Sutra at the beginning of the year is like a cherry blossom blooming from trees. Look at this beautiful picture of a cherry blossom blooming from trees. A lotus unfolding in a pond, sandalwood leaves unfurling on snow mountains, or the moon beginning to rise. Now Japan is becoming an enemy of the Lotus Sutra, has invited misfortune from 1,000 miles away. In light of this, it is clear that those who now believe in the Lotus Sutra will gain fortune from 10,000 miles away. Let me tell you a story, and I'm going to close. Years ago, I read this Gosho, and I was so heartbroken. My heart was broke because I broke up with this girl, and she left me heartbroken. And I said, boy, if I can just find anybody. And I took my butt to Kenya, and I was going to marry the first woman I see. And this woman was like Kenya, about 10,000 miles. I went to Kenya, and I married this woman. And today, I have the most beautiful son who I've shown and demonstrated. Right now, I'm married to a woman from Ethiopia who is the most beautiful and kindest wife. So when you chant Myoho Renge Kyo, you will gain fortune from 10,000 miles afar. Again, this Gosho is called the New Year's Gosho. Hope you got something out of it. Have a happy New Year and a happy Kwanzaa. I'm Anthony Elmore, President and Founder of the Proud Black Buddhist World Association. Thank you very much. Forward. Forward. Come on, y'all, move forward. 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 Move forward. Forward. A new life is waiting on you. Forward. Chanting the Daimoku. Forward. Practicing the Lotus Sutra. Your dreams will now come true. Forward. Forward. A new life is waiting on you. Let's don't look backwards. Forward. See things through. Forward.